Hello, and welcome to my channel where I talk about books and bookish things. Tonight I'm doing something a bit different, and I'm talking to an indie horror author called Matt Rayner. In January, I started an indie horror book club to help amplify and promote indie horror authors, especially British ones, although I do love the Americans. And we have recorded the interview, but I missed the beginning off because this is the first time I've ever done this. And so I'm going to attempt to edit this beginning on to where we started talking. And we'll be talking about Matt's book. This was his first book, his debut, Echoes of Home, which we're reading currently in the book club. And everybody is really, really enjoying. It's beautifully poignant and evocative and atmospheric ghost story. So hopefully I'll be able to edit this in where I was asking Matt about where he came from and what his inspiration was. So, yeah, wish me luck. Here we go, my friend.
Obviously, with living in Stoke, I knew areas and streets, so I kind of mashed those both together.
It's really good. As I said before when we were talking, in the first book I read by yours, which was Amongst the Mists, which I've also handily got next to me, do you know, because why not?
Yeah.
That reminded me so much of the places I grew up as a young person in the Midlands. So yeah. I very much felt that. The book club, I love in the book, by the way.
When I was writing that one, because obviously the 90% of that is pretty much wrote in the wilderness, and a lot of places I used to visit as a kid was Cannock Chase.
Yeah, Cannock Chase.
So when I was writing that, I was very much thinking of that in my head.
I spent a lot of time in Cannock. My first boyfriend was from Cannock, and I used to spend a lot of time at Cannock Chase, up to no good, basically.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us about the book? What inspired it, and why did that particular theme resonate for you?
Well, in terms of about the book, it's very much a book based on isolation, loneliness. It's a very sad book, I suppose, in a sense, especially the backstory, without giving too much away. But it's about a young man from Stoke-on-Trent that's very much down on his luck, down on life, and he's given the opportunity to start afresh up in the Scottish Highlands, which he doesn't hesitate to do. So he moves up there very much on his own, and up in the Scottish Highlands, it's very remote. It is very isolated. So it's very much the perfect place for a spooky story. And it's not necessarily the house that he moves to, because that is very cliche with a lot of horror stories that you tend to read, past and present. But it's very much more the land around him that has a dark past which he tries to uncover. In terms of where I got the idea from, I used to, or still try to, as much as I can when work permits it, I used to do a lot of wild camping up in that area where the book is set. So I would do a lot of kayaking and wild camping. So I would go up there and usually spend about a week at a time, and it was perfect because literally as soon as you parked up your car, because it is that remote, you kind of set off into the woodland and you've seen nobody for like 5 days at a time.
Perfect.
Yeah, it does. So yeah, it was one of those things. It just kind of came to me on one of those trips. It's like the perfect setting for a ghost story, and that's
so poignant. It's just so poignant, I find. Do you know what I mean? It is grief and loss, and trying to understand that in an environment that's making him even more isolated. But it's beautiful. The writing is beautifully poignant. Which is what everyone in the book club has said, how much they have enjoyed the actual experience of reading it. So
that's wonderful. Thank you.
So have you always enjoyed ghost stories yourself as a reader? And have you ever experienced anything paranormal?
I've never experienced anything paranormal.
Me
Nothing
neither.
at all. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a big believer in it either. I very much enjoy the feeling that you get from reading a ghost story. I love that, especially when you're on your own and reading it. You know, your hair's rising and goosebumps on your arm. I think it's great, and that's something that I wanted to try and do in this book. I
I love
apologise.
classics.
I've forgotten what was the first question you asked before I answered that one. It was a two-part question, I think.
Have you always enjoyed ghost stories?
I didn't start reading ghost stories, or I suppose I did in a sense. I was brought up very much on classical reading, so I enjoyed very much like the Dickens stuff. He did ghost stories, and Oscar
The
Wilde as well.
Signalman.
So yeah, stuff like that, and the Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. That stuff was really appealing to me. But I didn't start reading more contemporary horror probably until I was in high school. And that was more your mainstream horror, so people like Stephen King or Susan Hill, people like that.
I love classic. Edwardian and Victorian Gothic fiction is my favourite genre. So, A Signalman by Charles Dickens is one of the scariest ghost stories ever written, and
Fantastic.
so I completely agree. I love that kind of almost you can read by candlelight kind of
Yeah,
reading. Do you know what? It should be
yeah,
by candlelight, and it should be a bit cold, and
yeah,
it should be snowing outside. This time of year is
yeah.
perfect for it, I think.
That's it. That's the perfect setting.
It is. So, and when and why did you start writing? Is it something you've always done since you were young, or something you just decided one day to
No,
give it a go? Or
yeah, not really. I had no interest in a lot of reading at school. It wasn't until after I finished school that I started picking up a lot more books. I always liked the idea of wanting to try it, and I think that probably stemmed more off watching films about authors than reading books themselves.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it was 2014 when I started writing, and it was this book, and I didn't release it till 2000. It's been a couple of years now. It was like 2021, I think, when I released this one, and it was purely down to the fact that I didn't know there was an indie world out there at the time. I was very much a mainstream reader, so in terms of all the the Facebook communities that are out there now that support indie writing and indie
yeah,
authors, that was completely non-existent to me at all. So the reason why this one took so long is purely because I didn't take it seriously. And even when I did finish, I kept it for a couple of years thinking, well, who the hell would want to read it?
yeah,
So yeah, it kind of just sat there for quite a long time. And it wasn't until around 2020, I reached out. I joined a couple of Facebook groups for signed books, and that's where I met Jim Oddy. And he kind of gave me a couple of pointers in terms of which directions to go. He read the book, he enjoyed it, or either that, or he just lied to my face. So, but yeah,
you two are very funny together. To be fair,
yeah, me and Jim, we've kind of hit it off, and it's not necessarily just been a friendship on Messenger. We met up a couple of times, and we have a good laugh, and we have a good banter between us as well, and we know
yeah.
not to take it seriously. We kind of know the limits.
And this
But
was excellent. This is the book that you co-wrote with
yeah,
Jim,
Bloodline.
which is
Yeah,
brilliant. It's a brilliant book.
thank you very much. I'm
So
sure he'll
what?
be happy to hear it.
Well, yeah. Well, we don't want to. We don't want to emphasize that too much. Is like.
Yeah, keep it quiet.
What authors inspired you? Do you have authors that inspire you? I mean, apart from Jim, obviously.
Currently at the moment, yeah, there's a couple, but I think now that one of the great things about indie writing is it opens up doors to so many other people as well. So there's so many really good ones out there. I mean, we're a part of the same kind of book community. You
Yeah.
see the books that get there's new ones every day, and yeah, there isn't anybody that particularly sticks out. But there's certainly books that I've really enjoyed, which I never would have discovered if I hadn't have been a part of that indie community.
I've got to say that indie writing for me certainly is just more freedom. I think you can
Yeah,
write things and publish things that the mainstream just wouldn't consider, especially with horror. Horror is my
yeah,
favorite genre, and I think that a lot of traditionally published horror is very kind of formulaic, and you get more people taking a chance with indie. Well, they'll try something, might not work, might work, but they'll give it a go. And that's what I love about it. I can't keep up with the amount of books that get sent to me from indie authors. As a reader, as a reviewer, and I try and do as many as I can, but they're exceptional. I mean, I read six arcs in December, and every single one of them was brilliant. All different, but brilliant. Such interesting takes on the genre. It was really good. What's your favourite part of writing? This is a question that was asked, and I thought this is a very difficult question to ask a writer, because I would have thought, it's a bit of a difficult one, isn't it?
Finishing the book.
The end, basically. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy the process, but finishing is an accomplishment. And don't get me wrong, once you've finished, you still have that editing process. But yeah, in terms of favorite, the end. Yeah.
And what is your preferred genre of horror yourself? Do you prefer what kind of horror do you like to read, to consume?
I think it is very much paranormal. The paranormal
supernatural.
Kind of horror. I do quite enjoy the dark fantasy side as well. So stuff like John Edward Durham, his Winterset Hollow. That modern day classic.
Fantastic book.
So I'm not just stuck to ghost stories. I will very much kind of broaden what I read and try different stuff, especially if it's been well recommended. But yeah, I think I tend to go for the more atmospheric books than anything.
I like something with I think it's probably the most popular genre, actually, supernatural, paranormal, things that make you feel, that might not necessarily be, straight up gore or gruesome. And I enjoy that as well, don't get me wrong. But where they actually, you put down that, where you look around, where you're reading a book and you're like, did I just hear something? That feeling, I think is really, really excellent. What are you working on at the moment, Matt? Are you writing at the moment?
Yeah, currently I'm almost finished, to be honest. It's the prequel to Echoes of Home.
Oh,
so but it's a little bit larger than I expected it to be. So it's currently it's just short of 500 pages at the moment. So it's bigger than the original book, Echoes of Home.
Oh, well, that's good to know. And there are some conventions coming up this year. There's a big one. You're going to the one in Dudley, aren't you, in March?
I am going to the one in Dudley in March. Currently, that is the only one that I think I am attending so far. I don't tend to plan too far in ahead, and I don't do short notice either, purely because obtaining author copies for signing. But yeah, there's a lot of people going to the Dudley one that I communicate with on a daily basis, so that should be good fun.
I'm devastated I can't go because it's so close to where I come from.
I forgot you. Yeah.
So, but it's sadly it's end of financial year, so I can't take time off then, sadly. But I have no more questions for you, Matt. That was pretty much just to let you know that the book club are really enjoying the book. They're really loving it. We've got a discussion at the end of the month about it on YouTube, and so thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate your time.
You're more than welcome. Thank you very much.